Hey guys, Spud here, as always. In the last Red Flag event, I flew an F-14A Tomcat as an aggressor, fighting against the BlueFor OCA and DCA flights, covering a Battlefield Air Interdiction Effort. Well, my RIO and I found ourselves in the merge with two F-15E Strike Eagles who were flying DCA. And somehow we managed to pull a victory out of our butts and shot both of them down before the second element of Strike Eagles could react to help them out. I would call this fight 1/3 luck, 1/3 skill, and 1/3 aircraft type model series matchup. So I guess Tomcat is better than the Strike Eagle? In another PvP event, I was the one flying the F-15E Strike Eagle and merged with an F-14A Tomcat after downing his wingman in BVR, and in this fight the F-15E came out as the victor. So what's the common denominator here in our admittedly rather small sample size? Well, the answer is external fuel tanks, and the extreme amount of drag that they create. If you look really closely, you'll notice that my highly skilled and very experienced opponents, which, side note, I am not denigrating you guys at all, it was an awesome fight, forgot to jettison their external fuel tanks prior to the merge. And to be completely fair, my RIO and I totally neglected to punch off our bags as well in the F-14A. This is among other dumb stuff I did, such as nervously firing sidewinders way outside of launch parameters during that fight. So today, let's tackle the different methods of jettisoning external stores from our F-15E Strike Eagle, because it might just save your digital life next time you get bounced by some MiGs, have a SAM fired at you, or you run into a critical emergency. Alright guys, welcome back to the office of the F-15E Strike Eagle, and we'll go ahead and hop right on into talking about how to jettison stores from your aircraft. We're going to start off with the most commonly used methods of jettisoning stores and move to the least commonly used methods. Looking down at the left-hand side of the instrument panel, just underneath the left MPD, we have two different controls that can be used for actually jettisoning those stores off of your racks and pylons. We have the Selective Jettison knob off to the left-hand side with a big red jet button in the very center. Looks very similar to the one that is in the FA-18C Hornet, but works in a slightly different way that we'll go over today. And then we have the Push to Jet Emergency Jettison button on the bottom right-hand side of the left side of the instrument panel. We'll talk about this one last in the video, so if you'd like to skip forward to that, that's going to be the last method that we talk about. Moving back to the Selective Jettison knob, we can rotate the outer ring to the desired station that we want to actually, or the desired method I should say, that we want to use to jettison those stores. This knob's a bit different from how it works in the FA-18C, because if you move the knob to the left-hand side, this is going to be a way to actually jettison stores and release stores in an armed configuration in an emergency situation where maybe you've taken battle damage, but you still want to drop your bombs on target. We'll go over those in a separate video if you guys would like, so please let me know in the comments section down below. To jettison stores in a non-armed method, such as in an emergency, you're going to want to rotate the knob to the right-hand side. Moving this knob to the right-hand side is also going to be the way that you're going to be jettisoning those external fuel tanks that we talked about in the intro to this video. The most commonly used method of jettisoning stores from the F-15E Strike Eagle is going to be Combat Jettison. So let's move our selector knob to the Combat Jettison position. Now, Combat Jettison is very cool because it allows us to set up two different programs that we can use to actually jettison different combinations of stores from our aircraft from within the pack system. So let's set that up here. We're going to move to our MPCD, go to Menu 1, Armament, and then Combat Jet down here. This can be set up at any time throughout your flight, and I like to set this up while I'm still on the ground, so that way I can get rid of any external stores in some sort of an emergency very quickly. Now, we have a few options here. Down at the bottom, we have Program 1, which is selected with the little box, and we have Program 2. Whichever program is currently selected will be the first program to be jettisoned off of the aircraft, and it will then automatically select the other program. The options on the left-hand side here will pertain to how a particular store is jettisoned off of an option up on the top. For store, that will drop the actual weapon only. For pylon, that'll drop the entire pylon and everything on that pylon off of the aircraft. For rack, that's going to drop all of the air-to-ground ordnance on a particular rack on your aircraft. Normally you're going to want to keep this in the store or rack position, because if you put it in the pylon position and you jettison your fuel tanks, you'll also get rid of any AMRAAMs or sidewinders that are also on your wing stations. So let's go ahead and set up our Program 1. For Program 1, I'm going to select my 2 fuel tanks. These are going to be the wing station fuel tanks that you usually see players carrying on their F-15Es. To enter this into the Program 1, hit the Enter button on the bottom right there. Pretty self-explanatory that way. And for our second program, we'll go ahead and select our 2 rows of Mark 82s on our left and right CFT. Hit Enter, and now we can see everything is set and ready to go. We'll go ahead and reselect Program 1, so that way when we first press our red jettison button here, we'll jettison our fuel tanks. And then it'll automatically swap over to Program 2, so if we have to get rid of our Mark 82s, then we're ready to do so. So we can kind of think of this as we're set up to drop our external fuel tanks on our ingress to the target area once our fuel tanks are dry, and we can get rid of those, get rid of a whole bunch of drag, all that good stuff, and then we're ready to drop all of our Mark 82s off of our aircraft in case we get, say, a SAM fired on us or something of that nature, or we really get bounced by MiGs, and we just got to get everything off of the aircraft. Similarly, we could just also do a very quick double press on the jet button, and both the programs will run and all of our external stores will be dropped off of our aircraft. To actually jettison those stores, Master Arm has to be in the armed position. So let's go ahead and run Program 1 of our Combat Jettison. We're just going to press and hold the jettison button, and we can see that our fuel tanks are now gone off of our aircraft. This will automatically reselect over to Program 2, and if we press the jettison button one more time, our 2 rows of Mark 82s on our CFTs are now gone. You can also see that if you do have the Combat Jettison page open, which most people will not have open, it does not automatically move the box between the 2 programs, so that could be slightly confusing. But most people are going to have this MPD up to a very different page, like the air-to-air radar, the air-to-ground radar, the TWS page, HSI, the TSD, whatever you need in the situation that you're in. But just know that those programs are ready to go. So let's go ahead and move over to the air-to-ground Selective Jettison position. Alright guys, let's go ahead and jump into talking about the second most commonly used method of jettisoning stores from the F-15E Strike Eagle. We're going to head right back on down to our Selective Jettison knob right on the bottom left-hand side of the instrument panel, and we're going to go 1, 2, 3 clicks over to the A/G for air-to-ground Selective Jettison position. Now, in both the A/G for air-to-ground and A/A for air-to-air Selective Jettison options here, it's going to open up a separate Selective Jettison page on the MPCD automatically. This is going to be a very similar page to how the Combat Jettison page in the pack system works. All we need to do is just select which pylons and which stores we want to jettison. So let's go ahead and get rid of our fuel tanks here. And then we just want to make sure our master arm is set to arm. Then all we got to do is hit the jettison button right there. Hold that for a nice long 1 second press. And we can hear that the tanks have been punched off, and we can see that our external fuel tanks are no longer with us. So let's go ahead and hop on over to our next method of jettisoning stores. Alright guys, we're on to the third most used method for jettisoning stores off of our F-15E Strike Eagle. So we're once again going to return back to our selective jettison knob on the bottom left-hand side of the instrument panel. And we'll go ahead and move the selector ring 2 positions to the air-to-air selective jettison page. Now once again, that's going to populate our air-to-air jettison page automatically on our MPCD. So let's get rid of the stick here, make it a little easier to see. And we are now able to jettison any air-to-air missiles that we have on our aircraft. Now, you might be thinking, Spud, why would I want to jettison an air-to-air missile off of my aircraft? Well, there's a couple different reasons. Like, say, if you were going to fire that missile and the missile failed to come off the rail, or maybe even more catastrophically failed, the rocket motor fired, but the missile did not leave the rail of your aircraft. Or in a kind of freak kind of situation where you've taken AAA fire and some of that shrapnel from that AAA fire has hit that air-to-air missile and actually ignited the rocket motor. Now, this actually did happen once in real life. A United States Marine Corps FA-18 Hornet during Operation Desert Storm was hit by AAA right in the Sparrow on one of the cheek stations, and the rocket motor actually went off and fired while the missile was still on the rail. And it definitely burnt up the tail of the airplane, but other than that, the airplane did return back home safely, thank gosh. So it works just the same way that the selective air-to-ground jettison page does. If we have a missile that we want to get rid of, so let's say the forward missile on our left CFT there, we fired it and it did not come off the rail and it has failed somehow, and we believe that it's going to be dangerous to keep it on our aircraft, we'll just select it there, and we'll go master arm to on, and we'll press and hold that jettison button once again. And we heard a little clunk as the missile was kicked off the airplane, and we can see that missile is gone. So something a little bit more complex here. What if we have a Sidewinder that's failed, that's out there on one of our wing stations? Well, that's a little bit different. We have to actually get rid of that entire pylon, which is a little unfortunate because that means we're potentially going to lose 2 air-to-air missiles as a result of getting rid of one of those faulty missiles, and we're going to lose an entire pylon off the aircraft, which will definitely upset the weight and balance of our aircraft, which is a little bit more difficult to deal with because the F-15E is not a fly-by-wire aircraft. So all we need to do is select a pylon. So let's say that left-hand Sidewinder is acting up on us and she is not coming off the rail, and once again we believe it's going to be dangerous to keep that missile on the aircraft. So all we need to do is then press and hold the jettison button, and that entire pylon is now gone. Let's move on to the last method of jettisoning stores from our F-15E Strike Eagle. Alright guys, for our last method of jettisoning stores off of our F-15E, this is going to be what you're going to be using in case you find yourself in a very bad emergency situation. So maybe we've taken battle damage and we need to just get rid of everything in one foul swoop to be as light as possible to get as far as we possibly can with a fuel leak or a dead engine, or maybe we've taken off and we've ingested some birds into the engines and we just need to get the aircraft as light as possible as quickly as possible. And that's when it comes to the Emergency Jettison push to jet button on the bottom right hand side of the left side of the instrument panel. So all you need to do is press and hold this button for 1 second, and it will jettison everything off of the aircraft in succession. It is good to note that this button will also work anytime, even if the master arm switch is set to safe. You have the landing gear lever down, and your landing gear are down, and your flaps are down as well. So let's go ahead and push this guy to demonstrate to you guys, and let's open up the packs, and so that way you guys can see all the stores coming off the aircraft here. So, in 3, 2, 1, here we go. And they are all gone, just like that, including all of the pylons and air-to-air missiles. So this is a really good way to get rid of everything in a hurry. Now, in naval aircraft, they call that button, especially in the FA-18, the Admiral's Doorbell, because if you accidentally press that button, you're definitely going to have to go visit the Admiral as a result. I guess here in an Air Force jet, we can call it the General's Doorbell, because if you accidentally press that and jettison all of your stores, hopefully not over a populated area, then you are definitely going to have to go see the General. Alright guys, thanks for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something from it. When it comes to jettisoning stores off of your F-15E Strike Eagle, it's definitely something you're going to need to know, especially if you're in a situation where you could potentially merge with other aircraft. The F-15E isn't the best close-in dogfighter, but if you get rid of those very, very draggy external fuel tanks, you'll give yourself a fighting chance, and you can hopefully win that fight and continue on with your strike mission, or at least return home to live to fight another day. So thanks for watching guys, please give the video a like and a subscribe, and we will see you in the next one. Fly safe out there guys, and enjoy this beautiful game.